Christ is risen. He is risen indeed. Well, welcome to our Resurrection Sunday message. We're picking up the narrative as the lectionary has prescribed for today in Mark chapter 16 verses 1 through to 8. When the Sabbath was over, Mary Magdalene and Mary, the mother of James, and Salome brought spices so that they might go and anoint him. And very early on the first day of the week, when the sun had risen, they went to the tomb. They had been saying to one another, "Who will roll away the stone for us from the entrance of the tomb?" When they looked up, they saw that the stone, which was very large, had been rolled back. As they entered the tomb, they saw a young man dressed in a white robe, sitting on the right side, and they were alarmed. But he said to them, "Do not be alarmed. You are looking for Jesus of Nazareth, who was crucified. He has been raised. He is not here. Look, here is the place they laid him. But go, tell his disciples and Peter that he's going ahead of you to Galilee. There you will see him, just as he told you." So they went out and fled from the tomb, for terror and amazement had seized them. And they said nothing to anyone, for they were afraid. Christ is risen. He is risen indeed. And thus we see what I want to suggest is the end of the narrative of Mark's Gospel. Sure, there is another 8 or so verses, I think, which follow. And I think a lot of the best scholarship has concluded that they were tacked on afterwards. Actually, I don't have any problem with that. However, we need to recognise that the story itself is crafted by Mark, actually probably finished at verse 8. That as we read on from there, we see a different voice picks up the story. It's almost like the intimacy and the warmth of the narrative, which is Mark's. There's a generous simplicity about it, an honesty about it, finishes here at verse 8. It finishes with the rumour of the rising of Jesus. We don't actually see Jesus appearing, the risen Christ appearing in the gospel at all, but the promise of it is so strong and so rich and so full that there's never any question in the narrative itself that it has happened, that Christ has indeed risen. It's almost as if what follows afterwards, it's like the end of a movie where the credits have started to roll and you might be shown flashes of the subsequent episodes that are to come, and maybe there's a captions or there's a voiceover which just rolls out as the final credits of the movie are rolled. I'm not saying it doesn't belong, but it seems to me that within up to verse 8 here, there's a kind of authentic gospel narrative voice. And we see some of the little details, like the two women as they're coming to the tomb in the small hours, when it's still dark or just dusk is quietly disappearing. And they're concerned about the practical matters of who's going to roll the stone away. It has that sense of authenticity about it. And then we see what I think is the amazing story. The stone already is rolled away. And as they go in, they see this young man dressed in white who gives them the good news and Jesus' instructions. Now, I just want to simply suggest that the stone is rolled away not to let Jesus out, but to let the witnesses in, so that everybody can see that he's not there anymore. He's gone. That the tomb is in fact empty. And then he has these words, this messenger for Jesus. Go and tell his disciples and Peter that he is going ahead of you to Galilee. There you will see him, just as he told you. Go and tell his disciples and Peter. Wonderful. Isn't it wonderful? It's not that Peter is an afterthought. It's that Peter is front and centre of Jesus' heart. He wants Peter to know that Peter's included. Peter isn't an also-ran. Peter isn't a person that he's dropped like a hot potato because of Peter's denial of him, because of Peter's failure, because of Peter's weakness. Peter's included, and he says, tell his disciples and Peter, make sure that you mention Peter by name. Make sure that Peter knows he's included. That they're to go to Galilee, and there I will catch up with them all, including Peter. Peter has to be there. I want to see Peter. I'm so looking forward to seeing Peter. That Peter's failure doesn't matter. Peter's weakness doesn't matter. Peter's denial doesn't matter. It's all washed into the past. And I just long to see my friend. I long to meet with him again. I long to see him re-established. And what we discover as we see the narratives, particularly as we see it in John's Gospel, that there is a fullness of restoration for Peter. That Peter's weakness, that Peter's failure, they're all things that actually contribute to his ultimate greatness. Because they show Peter that he can't do it on his own. They show Peter his weakness, his inability to save himself, to rescue himself, to help himself. And that it's only the grace of God, it's only the generosity, the kindness, the authority, the power, the love of Jesus that is able to provide him with all that he needs to be the magnificent apostle that he's becoming. Go tell his disciples and Peter. And it seems to me that this is written for all the Peters out there. For all of us who have stuffed up. For all of us who don't feel good enough. For all of us who feel that in some way we're not worthy of the risen Christ. Because the risen Christ is not the case. You are. You are. You're one of mine. You're part of the family. You belong. And I rejoice in who you are and in who you're becoming. So may this resurrection day be a joyous one for you, knowing that it doesn't matter what the past has held and has meant for you, that the future is a place where you are included with Jesus, simply because it's within his love and his grace to restore and to make new, and to make sure that all those things which you feel so inadequate about, he's able to plough in and to use as a basis for growth and life and vitality and strength in the future. Because you know who you are and whose you are. Christ is risen. He is risen indeed. God bless you.